Have you ever been told something and then said to yourself, there's got to be a catch? The Investor Catch starts now.
And welcome to the Investor Catch. My name is Cynthia Defazio, and I'm joined today by Jonathon McCoy and Matt Goolsby of the Market Advisory Group. Matt, how are you today?
Good, Cynthia. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for asking. Jonathon, how are you?
Absolutely wonderful. Thanks for having us here today.
It's wonderful to have both of you on the show because I know that you've been so incredibly busy. Obviously, just helping people plan properly for retirement is so important. And also, you have collaborated together on an amazing book. So let's talk a little bit about your book, The Investor Catch. What was the inspiration behind writing that, Matthew?
Well, we had been putting a lot of thought into it over the years and just really seemed like a lot of the people we'd meet with one-on-one, and understandably so, were very confused about the investment world. So we wanted to put together some thoughts here, easy read, about 100 pages,
okay.
And just to talk about on a high level what things we think they should be paying attention to, not necessarily just in their investments, but also in their retirement.
Okay, so people have a lot of questions, obviously. Jonathon, what types of questions do you hear quite often from your clients?
Well, especially in regard to the Investor Catch, one of the inspirations for the book is people have no idea what they're paying for these services, no idea what they're paying for the various investment products that they own. And that's what really drove us towards building a very simple guidebook to what types of expenses could be existing. And I know that's one of the common issues that we're going to talk about today, but not just how much does it cost, but what level of service are you actually receiving for those expenses that are already existing in the investments that you own today?
You know, I find that to be true when you think about it. People obviously go to their mailbox and they grab out their statements and they open them. Sometimes not. Maybe they're afraid to open them. They kind of put them in a drawer. But it's so important to open those statements and to actually examine to know what you're actually holding. Correct? Isn't that the case, Matthew, that you have to know what you're invested in?
That gives you a big advantage. Sometimes you don't have to know all maybe the mechanics of it, or maybe you are that kind of person that you want to know the mechanics of it, but it's important to know the different vehicles that you own and that you're invested in, because they react differently during market crises, they react differently during market booming times, they react differently as far as fees, and it all boils down to the fact that if you're not on top of knowing what you have, oftentimes when there's a mistake or when it's cost you dearly, it's often too late to do anything about it.
Jonathon, how often do you have people coming in that have questions about what is actually in their portfolio? Is that a common question that you hear?
Every day.
Every day.
Vast majority of people that we speak with on a consultative basis, which is something that we do very regularly, complimentary as part of our services, walking through a full-blown portfolio analysis, not just to understand what you own and, as Matt mentioned, how it's going to react in different market conditions, but we talked about before the expenses there. Almost no one that I talk to on a regular basis knows that.
Yeah.
There are plenty of people that we talk to, a lot of do-it-yourselfers who have managed their own portfolios for years, but the majority of people that we work with that already have financial advisors are nearly clueless about what they own, which can be a dangerous position to leave yourself in.
And the other thing that we alluded to earlier, Matthew, was obviously knowing how much you're paying for those services. So let's talk a little bit about hidden fees in portfolios, if we could. How important is it for someone that especially is entering their retirement years to know exactly what they're paying?
Very important. I mean, we always know what we're paying for what we go fill up our car with gas per gallon. I mean, when I'm going to the grocery store, I'm looking at the price tags as I'm putting things in the cart. As a society, we want to be very conscious of what's costing us money before it costs us money. I mean, you'll hear people say, well, what's this going to cost me often? And if they're not paying attention to that, again, when they find out, it's often too late. And not just from an investment standpoint of what it's costing them in fees, but also taxes.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, with taxes, a lot of people don't understand what something's cost them until February, March, and April when they go to file their taxes.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. Well, Jonathon, let's talk a little bit more in detail about that. Obviously, how does someone know what's right for them when they're making their investment choices? How do they know? Stocks, bonds, ETFs? How do they decide?
Well, it's a process. For us and the folks that we meet with, it's not just here's product A, B, and C, which one do you like? That can be, again, a kind of a dangerous process to go through. And a lot of brokers in our industry, that's essentially how they're compensated, is processing a sales transaction. But if you're simply purchasing investment products, that's different than walking through an entire plan. And it can be difficult. We often meet with folks 4, 5, sometimes 6 times before making any recommendations, because we've got to be sure that we're sure of what their situation is, what their long-term needs are. And also, I mean, we talk about risk tolerance all the time. I think that's what a lot of financial advisors talk about. But if you don't have a clear understanding of your risk tolerance, it's hard to predict how you're going to react during the next market crisis. You know, in the 2008 financial crisis, for example, some people were bailing out at the worst possible time.
Yeah.
And those are the folks that we're meeting with still today that are trying to recover from a crisis that occurred 12 to 13 years ago.
And how often do you see that people react out of fear? They get nervous, and so they make a reaction that's basically driven by the fact of the unknown. They just want to protect what they have.
Well, as human beings, we're very emotional creatures, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and sometimes when we make decisions in an emotional state, sometimes that's not in our best interest. So you want to make sure you have a process there to make sure you're doing things for a reason, or maybe that there's things in place that you can feel better and not so emotional when the market's doing its thing and being very volatile. And so we actually will provide a complimentary consultation in our office for that.
And let's talk a little bit about that. What does it feel like when someone first comes into the office, Jonathan?
Most people I find are apprehensive.
Okay.
It's human nature, right? You're meeting with someone new, you're talking about your life savings. You've got to build that trust. Like I said, our consultation process, sometimes 2, sometimes 6, or even more meetings before someone decides to work with us or not.
Okay.
And we always give people the opportunity to say no, or say, you know, I think we've gotten to the point where we either got what we came for, we got the education we wanted, or we're just not feeling the connection that we wanted to feel. As a financial advisor, it's important to have that relationship. But
Yeah.
I would say that the most common feeling people have when they first come to us, especially from some of our shows and educational events, is they don't know what to expect. They're getting ready to consider handing over the trust and management of their life savings to someone, and especially if you've never had that experience before, it can be very it can shut people down.
Yeah.
And we just do everything we can as advisors to get people to open up, because it's important when we're identifying what direction might we take them.
Sure,
So.
that makes sense. And it takes time for you to get to know each individual client, giving them one-on-one attention and getting to know what their story is and their plan is for retirement. Let me ask you a question, Matthew. How important is it to have a second opinion? If someone is currently working with an advisor and perhaps they haven't heard from them in, let's say, a year or longer, how important, in your opinion, is it to have a second opinion?
Well, opinions are great, aren't they? I mean, everyone has them, but we have a process that we do in our office, not just from the investment side, but the tax side and also estate planning side. With the tools that we have in our firm, that with the tax division, like I said, in the estate planning firm,
Yeah.
we can look at it from a process. And it's not just an opinion-based, it's fact-based, and we look at it and take the people that we help or maybe just have conversations with through that to make sure that they're on the right path, or maybe they're considering some things in the future that they're not getting from their current advisor. Because oftentimes advisors out there, they can't provide tax advice, and we find
Yeah.
that the tax component is just an equally important piece of that as the investment side is. And so if you guys want to have a complimentary review, feel free to reach out to us at 833-77-CATCH, or that's 228-24.
Well, like you mentioned, it's so important to have that second opinion. So this is probably the perfect time for us to open up the phone lines. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. To the viewers at home, the phone number to call is on your screen, and that number is 833-772-2824. If you need to have a look at what your current portfolio is doing, what Jonathan and Matthew are offering you today is a complimentary consultation. All you have to do is pick up the phone and call. That number, once again, is 833-772-2824. We have to take a very short commercial break, but don't go anywhere. When we come back, I'm going to have so much more with Matt and Jonathan about how to know what you are currently invested in. Stay tuned.
When people work with Market Advisor Group, they get a feel of sense of family. There's a lot of relationships that are made and going on in this conference room, and we really take a lot of pride in that and a lot of satisfaction in that.
Every client we work with, we make a custom-made plan to fit them and help reach their goals in life. And then another thing that makes us unique is we want to meet quarterly with our clients and have reviews.
Market Advisory Group, we have a process, and the process we take people through is first to understand what they have, understand who they are, and then we put together an income plan for them and show them how they can look forward to retirement and not look, though retirement is going to be a stressful time. It needs to be a stress-free time.
A few unique features of working with Market Advisory Group is holistic in-house financial consultants. We've got an in-house CPA, Joshua, an in-house estate planning attorney, Gerald, an in-house Medicare advisor, Bill. We rely on all of those professionals for, again, additional service within our consultative process, making sure that we've got the advice and the expertise behind the recommendations that we make.
You know, as an advisor, I'm not there to sell them one way or the other. I'm there to educate them, to let them know what their choices are. Then I try to help them make the right choice where they can save money and feel confident in their decision.
Absolutely the best part of my job is getting a stack of paperwork from somebody and they don't know what to do, and then I can turn around and give them back a tax return, but also to be able to explain what they can do next year that will give them a better answer than what they had this year.
When we've got clients that are calling and they need to help out a child or need to help out a grandchild or need to help themselves out and they're in a situation they didn't expect to be in, I really relish the opportunity to help them through that, help them make the educated decisions in somewhat stressful situations, because a lot of folks don't have that type of counsel.
We meet with so many people one-on-one in this office that don't ever end up becoming a customer or doing business with us, and that's okay. But when they leave our office, we know that we've helped them either get some answers to some of the questions they had or get some clarity on maybe their own path.
But one of the things that we hear all the time is, I wish I would have met you guys 10 years ago, because how much further could I be down the road? Well, Johnny Appleseed said, when's the best time to plant a tree? 10 years ago. When's the second best time? Today. And so if we can help people today going forward, that just brings an incredible amount of comfort and excitement for us to come to work every day.
And welcome back to the Investor Catch. My name is Cynthia Defazio, and I'm joined today by Jonathon McCoy and Matt Goolsby of the Market Advisory Group. Gentlemen, I love that video showing a day in the life of the office and also the different team members that are in play at the office. I love the fact that you have the Medicare, the tax division. That's so important for people to have that be a one-stop shop, if you will. So thank you for letting us play that video about you. Let's talk a little bit about why it's so important to have someone help plan for retirement. Obviously, I alluded to the first segment of the show, people going to their mailbox, grabbing their statements, Matt, if you will, but that's not really a plan. So why is it important to have a plan in place for retirement?
Well, many different reasons, not just from just the investment side, but also, like you mentioned, the tax side. We mentioned before the break, that most people don't understand what they're paying in taxes until they go file their taxes, and it's too late at that point. One of the fantastic resources we have with having market tax services in our firm is during the fourth quarter of the year, we're going through with people figuring out what should they convert to a Roth, a tax-free retirement account, pay the taxes today if you think taxes are going up in the future, which we happen to think that's the case, and then also plan for the next year on tax planning. Most people don't meet with their tax, I'm going to call them preparer instead of a tax advisor, and in the following year, when it's too late to do anything about that and plan for their taxes. And the planning side is just as equally important on the tax side as it is the investment or retirement plan side, and we think they all go together that way. Wouldn't you agree, Jonathon?
Yeah, we have to connect the dots. That's the reason we started bringing all these professionals in-house. Is prior to working with our tax team especially, we were, like a lot of advisors have to do, referring people to outside CPAs, and when you don't have all those professionals in-house, no one's communicating. It's like that classic game of telephone. The message is completely different by the time it gets to the end of the line from where it was initially started. I think of one client of ours we've been working with for a few years now. The specific reason they started working with us was they had asked their financial advisor multiple times to help them with tax advice, and then 1 year it caught up with them and it cost them several extra thousands of dollars in taxes, not being able to get that advice. And their tax preparer, in this case, as opposed to a tax advisor, was not communicating with their financial advisor, and it cost them dearly at tax time.
Well, that makes sense because obviously a tax preparer, they focus on one calendar year. They're not looking at long-term what the impact could be. So you're saying to the viewers at home that it's very important to have a plan in place, especially for taxes.
Oh, and unless they think taxes are going down. I mean,
Yeah.
if they really think taxes are going down in the future, then they probably shouldn't worry about it. But if you can see the handwriting on the wall with all the money we've printed to get through the coronavirus pandemic and to just prop up the economy, taxes will have to go up just to pay the interest on this debt they've accumulated just to get us through this. And the problem is the majority of Americans have saved primarily in retirement accounts that have never had the taxes paid on them. So if they're not looking at this from a tax standpoint, their plan is I'm going to say ignoring a big risk out there in the future for one day when they have to take withdrawals out of it when they turn either 70 and a half or 72 and have to take those RMDs.
And that's something we can spend a lot of time talking about, obviously, is the RMD, because that can be something that is very critical to know how to navigate that properly, especially when tying in taxes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I emphasize all the time that we're dealing with we're working with the first generation that is retiring today that has lived and worked an entire career cycle as part of this tax experiment that we call IRAs, 401ks, and deferred tax savings plans. So the idea was you're going to be making less money in retirement than you did while you were working. Well, with especially some of these required minimum distribution rules, there's a certain floor to how much taxable income you're going to have to take in retirement. And if you've been the best of the best savers, you are most exposed to especially future higher tax rates. And most people aren't looking 10, 15, 20 years ahead for their taxes. They're just looking to April each year. And that's not going to get you very far down the road.
No, not at all. When you think about when you're looking at that one lump sum that you have to retire on, you have to factor in the fact that taxes could change. So I have to ask you something, obviously, Matthew. You mentioned you actually mentioned Roth contribution. Let's talk a little bit about the difference between Roth contribution and Roth conversion, if we could.
Absolutely. When you're contributing to a retirement account, you have to have earned income. So when you're retired, some people think that there's not an option for them to maybe change some of that money that's never been taxed to a tax-free account, and that's just not the case. But where I find most often happens in the investment world is financial advisors can't maybe assist with a Roth conversion because you have to know, again, what you're going to pay for that. We just talked about that before the break. Know what you're paying, not just for what you're paying for your investments, but what you're paying for your taxes and what you might pay for a Roth conversion. And if you do that Roth conversion, you need to know how much that's going to cost you. Well, if you go ask your financial advisor, what's this going to do to my taxes? High majority of the time they're going to say, well, we can't give you tax advice, go talk to your tax advisor. And so we have a little bit of an edge, I would say, because of having those in-house tax professionals help us navigate that and figure out what it's going to actually cost the client as far as, or what they might even just be able to do from a standpoint of taking advantage of that, from just filling out maybe one of their tax brackets, maybe 12% or 22%.
That makes perfect sense.
It does? Because it seems pretty complicated to me.
No, but when you explain it to me, it makes perfect sense. But I think for the viewers, are probably like, you know what, I want to know more about that. And that's why they really need to pick up the phone and take advantage of that opportunity to come in and to speak with both of you, because obviously you have so much knowledge to share. So for me, listening to you, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. But I'm sure people have a lot more questions.
And part of the reason we wrote the book in the first place is to expose expenses within investments.
Yeah.
That's why we called it the investor catch, who is poised to profit more on your investments, you or your financial advisor. But what we've quickly found is even after writing the book, and we're looking to do some revised and updated versions, is there's so much more to controlling your expenses. We have a saying that goes around the office all the time, kind of started by Matt's dad, that if something's going to cost you thousands of dollars, either now or in the future, when do you want someone to tell you about this?
Yeah.
And most of the time, people aren't finding out about these expenses until it's too late. So.
Absolutely, and you want to know as soon as possible so you can avoid any future mistakes, if you will. Well, gentlemen, this is the perfect time for us to reopen the phone lines. Would you both agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. To the viewers at home, the phone number to call is on your screen. That number is 833-772-2824. What you're calling in for today is a complimentary portfolio review. Let these gentlemen take a look at what you currently have in place. Is it the right retirement plan for you? If it needs to be tweaked or adjusted, wouldn't you want to know today? All you have to do is pick up the phone and call 833-772-2824. We have to take a very short commercial break, but don't go anywhere. I have so much more with Matthew and Jonathan as soon as we return.
How confident are you in your current financial plan? Do you know with certainty how the recent market volatility will affect your future hopes and dreams? How much are you paying in taxes? And how much are you losing to unnecessary high fees? You didn't work to save this money so that you could spend your time worried in retirement. Now is the time to take charge of your finances so you can feel confident about your future. Call in during the next 30 minutes of today's show only to set up an absolutely complimentary, no obligation, full-blown financial review that will result in your own customized written plan. This is a $999 value that we're giving away complimentary to the first 10 people who respond. We'll start with a full-blown analysis of what you already have, by running a report to untangle how much you are currently paying in fees, how you're allocated for risk, and what it's costing to work with your current advisor. Next, we'll identify your goals. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Where do you want to go, and who do you hope to go there with? Is your current financial plan set up to get you there without mishap? Let's design a roadmap to create a financial plan you can follow with confidence. Get the piece that so many people are missing from their retirement. Find out how having a written plan can make a difference to your retirement dreams. Call now to schedule your complimentary, no obligation, full-blown financial review today.
And welcome back to the Investor Catch. My name is Cynthia Defazio. I'm joined today by Jonathon McCoy and Matt Goolsby of Market Advisory Group. Gentlemen, a great show that we're having today, obviously talking about the importance of getting a second opinion, how important it is to know what you're actually invested in, what your portfolio consists of, and we talked about taxes, which is so important. So something to kind of tie into this segment, I want to talk a little bit about estate planning and how that factors into tax planning. Matthew, your thoughts on that? How do they go together?
Well, some people will say, I don't care what happens to my estate when I'm dead. But that's not necessarily a good way to look at it. Our estate planning attorney, Gerald Eidelman, he talks often in the classes that he'll teach on estate planning. Actually, estate planning is how you're going to control the last days of your life. Mm-hmm. We had a couple, a very unfortunate incident, had a recent buyout offer from a aircraft manufacturer in Wichita, Kansas, and the spouse, the wife, came into Gerald, our estate planning attorney, and asked him, hey, he's been given this pension buyout offer, we don't know what to do here. And Gerald, through the course of a conversation with her, found out that the buyout package came in two portions. The first packet was saying, yes, they want to take it. The second packet would come 30 to 45 days later saying where to send the money. Well, over that period of time, he went in the hospital and he had some very aggressive cancer, and it was unfortunate that he went downhill pretty quickly. And because they didn't have the proper estate planning documents in place, specifically here a financial power of attorney, she missed out on a $300,000 buyout option from this manufacturer and wound up with just $50,000. So if you don't have these proper plans in place, and it's not uncommon, we really don't think about it until emergency strikes. Mm-hmm. And that's just an advantage, again, of working with the whole team approach under one roof, because our clients, they're going through these processes that we have to make sure that they're avoiding these catches or these pitfalls in the future that could cost them a lot of money or hurt them dearly.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Jonathon, can I ask you the difference between a will and a trust, talking about estate planning? Can you help the viewers understand what the difference would be?
Yeah, so very basically, a will is to help organize the dispersal of any personal belongings and things that you cannot put a title on, put a beneficiary on, so on and so forth. There are various types of trusts, many types of trusts, and our estate planning attorney, Gerald, is the expert on those. A trust is essentially you're setting up a separate entity, almost like another person in a way, that can either take ownership of certain property while you're still alive or take ownership immediately after you pass, which can help organize exactly how assets are distributed. Now, we have to be careful, especially with trusts, when we're talking about retirement accounts, because the IRS has very specific and very strict tax rules on retirement accounts. If a trust is a beneficiary of your retirement account, your IRA or 401k, that can actually set you up for some set your beneficiaries and the trust up for some significant tax issues in the future. So you have to be very careful about how you're crafting that estate plan.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Matt, that's a great question. I'm glad that you tapped on that, actually. What happens when people are leaving money to their heirs, if you will, and how can that change their tax bracket that they're currently in?
Well, everyone's situation is different, and that's just, again, the advantage of having Gerald Eidelman of Eidelman Law Firm in our practice, because just like the questions you've had for Jonathan, what's the difference between a will and a trust, and what could this do to my tax bracket? People we meet with every day have those questions. And as just a regular advisor, we're only licensed to give investment advice. We're not allowed to give estate planning advice. We're not allowed to give tax advice. And because we have those professionals that we can bring in the conference room, we can get answers and clarity right there in that moment for the individuals we're helping. And it gives them the opportunity to maybe work through those problems. The disconnect does come when the advisor and the CPA or tax professional and the estate planning attorney are all not collaborating under the same roof or conference table. And I don't understand how anyone stands a chance out there to really have a great plan in place to avoid these unseen, unforeseen, unplanned instances in the future if they're not working as a team together under one roof.
That makes perfect sense. And Jonathan, is it a sigh of relief, if you will, when people realize that it's a one-stop shop, that when they come in, no matter what question they may have, there's going to be someone there that can help them guide in the right direction, if you will?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge for a lot of people is just knowing who to call.
Yeah.
Who do we reach out to with these wide variety of different questions? Well, as we've been working with people over the years, and they know consistently they can come to us, and we've got those resources to immediately answer their questions. They're not waiting around for weeks and months waiting to hear back from someone who they've never met before. As Matt mentioned, being able to bring them into the conference room, bring them onto the phone immediately to answer those questions, it's a game changer.
Absolutely. Matt, how often can your clients expect to hear from you? What is the communication style like?
Well, we don't make anyone come in if they don't want to, but we prefer to meet with them quarterly. I mean, just on this example alone, I mean, taxes, there's end of the year tax planning, and then there's tax preparation time. That's 2 times right there. And then if they're on Medicare, there's another time to maybe review their Medicare plans during Medicare open enrollment. And of course, we want to make sure every time we're meeting with them, going over to see if there's been any changes in their life or any changes we need to make in their portfolios when they're there. So every bit of 3 to 4 times a year easily, and maybe more, just depending on the personal circumstances.
And Jonathan, how important is it when there's a major life event, like let's say losing a spouse or someone decides they're going to retire? How important is it to have that be the first call that they make to their advisor?
Well, it's very important, and we talk about planning ahead all the time. Quick story, met with a gal just here in the last several months that unfortunately her husband passed away very prematurely this year, and she was inheriting his retirement account because she did not work with a financial advisor that had a tax professional working side by side with him. It's going to cost her several thousands of dollars in the future on the inheritance of her husband's retirement account that could have been handled differently. She could have deferred the taxes a little bit longer, but because the advisor did not know how to handle the transfer of that IRA from the husband to the wife based on their age difference, it's going to, essentially we are sort of picking up the pieces, trying to reorganize, okay, how can we make the best of a bad situation with our tax practice? Knowing who to call, yes, is important, but having that plan in place well ahead of time is even more important in our eyes.
Well, gentlemen, thank you for another amazing show this week. To the viewers at home, most specifically, thank you for spending time with us. The number to call once again is 833-772-2824. You're calling in for a complimentary portfolio review. Please don't miss this opportunity. Again, keep the questions coming. We look forward to seeing you next week. 833-772-2824. Thank you for watching.